Hi everyone, it's Sunday, so it's time for story time, and today I'm doing something a little bit different. I'm not in my normal room. I came up here to read to a couple of groups of animals because I thought that would be kind of a cool thing to do. So as you can see by the labels behind me, there's baby teddy bear hamsters here. So most of you have probably owned a teddy bear hamster, or at least some type of hamster, and you've seen some stuff about them. But really, we don't talk a lot of facts about hamsters, and so I found it really interesting, some of the cool things I found out about reading up on them, and maybe you will too. So hamsters actually come from Syria, Romania, parts of China, and generally just the Middle East. They are a desert animal, so they're actually really used to living in hot, dry climates, and because of that, they like to burrow. So the reason they like to burrow is during the daytime in those desert areas, it gets really, really warm. So they can burrow down and make all these elaborate tunnels, and then while they're down there, it stays nice and cool. The sun can't penetrate in. And then also in deserts, it does get very cold, especially at nighttime, and they do have seasons like we have here in Michigan. So during cold periods, they can hibernate. But the funniest thing about hamsters is that when they hibernate, unlike other animals that will just stay asleep and live off of fat storage, they get hungry, wake up and go find more food, store it, and then just go back to sleep. Their name actually comes from a German word that means the hoard, which is kind of a funny thing to think about because they do have big pouches that they like to store food in their mouth and then bring it back to their little lair underground. So there's all kinds of different hamsters. There's Roborovsky hamsters, there's these teddy bear hamsters. There's actually 24 different types of hamsters in the world. So the next time you go to a pet store and you think about getting a hamster, you think about whether you want one as a pet, realize that these guys are actually pretty cool and they come from a very, very unique environment. And also, most hamsters are endangered. They were brought to the United States in the early to mid 1930s, and that's when we started domesticating and making them pets. But a majority of them actually have very, very low numbers out in the wild. So in a way, having them in pet stores and having people that breed them helps keep the species alive. And this is a big part of work that zoos do. Zoos have what's called SSPs. So that stands for Species Survival Plan. And with that, they have animals that are very endangered, very few left in the world, and they breed them in order to make sure that the species stay alive. And inadvertently, pet stores sometimes do that too. Here at Proust Pets, there's actually a lot of animals that are bred that are low numbers out in the wild that they work with conservation programs to help try and restore those. In fact, the corals that are propagated here in the store are actually sent back down south to be repropagated out into the Florida reefs. So I don't know if I've mentioned in previous videos, but this pet store is very unique. It's not your typical pet store. They breed all kinds of cool stuff. They're involved with conservation programs. They're actually raising money right now for EVAC. It's a program I've mentioned before that I worked with down in Panama that helps with the Panamanian golden frog. It's a frog that's extinct in the wild, only is alive because of zoos. And so right now the store is raising money to send down to them to help them function. So if you're ever in the Lansing, Michigan area, you should definitely check out Proust Pets because we are unlike any other store you've ever been to. So I am going to bring a hamster out just for a quick second so you guys can get the close-up on him. Kind of sleeping, so I just let him know I'm here. And go ahead and scoop him up because every week we do our animal close-up. And you guys just really need to get a close-up of that absolutely adorable, sleepy little face. And just imagine these guys out in the wild gathering fruits and seeds and nuts and storing them in their big pouches on their cheeks and then bringing them to their burrows underground. And another interesting fact that I did not know before this, and I've worked with hamsters for years, out in the wild, they actually eat worms, insects, lizards, snakes, and even other small animals. So I'm sure if you've ever been bit by a hamster, you know the teeth are pretty vicious, and now we know why. So I'm gonna put this little guy back in and we can read his story. Here you go, little one. So, the story we picked today is very appropriate that I'm reading the teddy bear hamsters. It's called More Bears. This is a book by Kenn Nesbitt. So, this is a funny one. Once upon a time, there was a story. The story had absolutely no bears in it. Not a single bear anywhere. And then one day, more bears! What? Who said that? The author of the story looked around the room wondering where those voices were coming from. Were those the voices of children shouting? As I was saying, this story had absolutely no bears. The author was very certain about this. More bears! The author tried very, very hard to ignore the children who thought the story should have more bears! Okay, 2 bears. Happy now? A cuddly, wuddy little baby bear named Mr. Fluffy and his mama bear, Stella, who always wore a yellow hat. Like all bears, Stella and Mr. Fluffy were especially fond of more bears! Stop that. How many bears do you want this story to have? Do you really think there should be a Papa Bear named Captain Picklehead? And a bear named Uncle Sheldon who loved to play the ukulele? You do? Wow. Why didn't you say so? In that case, the author suddenly decided this is the story really needed. More bears! Yes, more bears. So the author added Astro Bear, who always kept a hamster in his pocket just in case. And then 3 more bears named Lester, Chester, Esther, and Floyd. Wait, that's 4. Oh well, 4 is okay, because after all, this story really needed more bears! It needed a bear named Lucky Eddie, who juggled carrots. And a bear named Elbow, who always wore his underpants on the outside of his regular pants. And since this probably wasn't enough, the author added even more bears! The author added 1 flying bear across the page in a cape, 2 bears reading comic books, 3 bears swinging through trees like monkeys, an entire team of firefighting bears running across the page with party balloons. There were bears hanging from the top of the page, bears sleeping in the corners, and bears standing on top of other bears. There were so many bears that they couldn't all fit on the page. It was so crowded that some bears started pushing other bears off the page, which made the author grumpy. And when authors get grumpy, they start changing the story. In fact, this author was so grumpy, he told all the bears to leave. Finally, the author had a story without a single bear anywhere, just the way he wanted it. Because you see, the author was quite certain that this story should have absolutely more chickens! That was one of my more fun ones to read. And I'm sorry, I got so wrapped up into it, I didn't actually show you the pictures. So we'll flip through those really quick because I really like yelling, more bears! As loud as I can. Jen, can you yell more bears?
More bears!
Who else is in the apartment that can yell more bears? Anybody?
More bears!
Say it louder!
More bears!
See, everybody loves more bears. Just as the story shows, the author didn't like it, but I think everybody here at Proust After Hours, cleaning up and taking care of the animals, I think we absolutely loved. On a count of 3, say it. 1, 2, 3. More bears! How cool is this book? I think probably the coolest one we picked up. Except for the T-Rex that ate all of his classmates. That was pretty cool too. So, Storytime is a little different this week. It's good to be different. It's good to change things up. And it's good to get goofy every once in a while, especially with your best friends when you get to work with them. So, have a good night.